How's it going, guys? Kevin here. I know it's been a very long time since I've made a video, but I really want to get back into the swing of things here and make you guys some more awesome footage of the full spectrum Muse laser. If you guys are looking at purchasing a laser, be sure to check out my referral code in the description below. Gets you $125 off your laser and helps me out as well. With that, we're going to jump in and I'm going to show you guys how to make some monograms today and also how to use some of your scrap material and make sure that you get all that your money's worth out of that piece of scrap material. Even though we don't have a camera on our Muse core, some people that's a little bit intimidating and they prefer to go the camera route, which is perfectly acceptable. I'm going to show you guys how we can use some of the new features in RE3 and some of the existing features to utilize that last little piece of material and make sure that we're getting our full money's worth out of that piece of acrylic here that we're going to be using today. So with that, let's head on over to the machine. I'll show you guys how we get set up. Alright, so we're back over to the laser. I've got a couple pieces of acrylic scrap here that I've just been waiting for a good project to use. So I'm going to be showing you guys how to utilize all of this material here and also how to use our new monogram feature in RE3. So first things first, I'm just going to drop this in. Nice thing, we can put that wherever we want. And then over here, I'm actually going to go to the reference markers feature, which is something that's actually always been in RE3. But one of the great new features here is our jog controls. So if you notice, we have our running man, our jogging man, and then our walking man. So one of the great features about this is before, when we would move the laser, we would only have this speed or this speed, which you could tell was a very big difference. So we've got the crawl, then we've got the run. But now we also have this medium speed, which I find is actually perfect for moving around and getting that fine touch adjustment for lining things up. This was always available in the web side of RE3, but now it's available on the machine side. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to jump to our fast mode, move over here, and then what I'm actually going to do is line this up. So you can see I'm actually a little bit out of focus here. So I'm going to show you guys how to focus our material here. So we've got this little brass nut on the side, so we're just going to unscrew that. You can see our nozzle is going to drop right down. This is the 2.5-inch nozzle. I like this because I do a lot of cutting, and it just helps if your material is a little out of focus. It gives you a little bit more wiggle room. So now that we've got that focus, what I'm actually going to do is switch down to the slowest, and I'm basically just going to move this all the way over to as far as I possibly can, and then I'm just going to slide this up and down here, and you can see how it's just touching on the edge there. We want that red dot to just be right on the edge. And you can see the fast is really fast there. So now that I've got it right on that edge, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to hit set marker. And then you can see there's a little dot here. And so because we're in absolute mode, which is something that I'll show you over on the settings page, that allows us to use these reference markers. So I'm going to go all the way across here, find my red dot over on this side, make sure I've got it perfectly dialed in. Right in the edge there. I'm going to set another marker there, and then I'm going to go down to the bottom and go a little faster. Move this over. We're going to find the bottom of our circle here. And we're going to set our marker again. Then we're going to go up to the top. We really don't even need to go up to the top at this point, but I'm just going to do it for good practice here. Just slow it down just a little bit, and there we go, right at the top. Perfect. So I'm going to add just another one on the side here just for fun, just to show you guys what we're doing here. So this circle was a previous project, so I know it's a perfect circle. So now that I've set the marker here, by selecting set marker, you can see we've sort of got our circle here. And now when we go back over to RE3, we're going to be able to basically drop a circle on there and pretty much know exactly where our design needs to be so that we can land it perfectly in this circle and use all the material possibly and make our design as big as we want for this piece of scrap. So now with that, let's jump over to the computer and we'll dive right into it. Alright, so now that we're in RE3, you can see we have our reference markers here. So because I know this is a circle, I'm going to go grab the ellipse tool. And what I'm going to do is grab this circle. Now you can see how it's changing size and shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the shift key. That's going to lock that orientation here. So now what I'm going to do is just kind of approximately size this, let go of it. Now I can easily just drag this in. And then what I'm going to do here is basically sort of guess what size my circle was. So maybe it was 4 1/4. We're going to basically just try to line this up. Looks like it might have been a 4.5-inch circle from that previous project. But what I'm going to do is basically line this up here. And you can see here were a little off, so it might have actually been a little bit smaller. Don't remember exactly what this was for here, but we're going to get this as close as we possibly can. Alright, so that actually looks pretty good. So we're hitting all of our reference markers there. So basically what we're going to use this circle for is a template so that we can fit our design in the circle and make sure that we're not going to be cutting outside of the circle. So again, as I mentioned earlier, we want our laser in absolute mode. So this is going to make sure that those reference markers are relative to the XY coordinate system in our laser, and it's not relative to the laser head when you use relative mode. So I have the laser trajectory mode on fast. This is something that has always been in RE3. You can switch between the two. The descriptions here are pretty exact. I've actually found that fast actually works very, very accurately, up to around 150 on the speed. So unless you're doing turbo mode, which is below here, and you're running over 150, you're really not going to notice any kind of error or wrong direction of the laser where it's missing a sharp corner or something like that. So I tend to leave mine in fast. One thing that I do like to change here is making sure that I disable the enable vector sorting. And basically what this means is when I go and do a job, if I want to cut a circle out and I want to engrave on something, I can actually run these in the order that I want. So on the left side here in the layers and objects, that will run in a top-down fashion. So that way I can put my engrave at the start and I can put my cuts at the end. And that's just helpful to make sure that if you have a warped piece of material and you focus it to engrave on that piece of material, if it gets cut out first and drops down to the honeycomb, that's going to mean your engrave's out of focus and you're not going to get the kind of job finish that you want on that. The reverse raster direction, you can do this to change whether or not it goes bottom up or top down, and that's because the fan is sucking all the fumes out the back. So because of that, if we run top down, all those fumes are basically going to be going back over your design. So I actually do like to enable this for most of my rasters. This combine all rasters, this is if you're doing multiple rasters. So if you're going to select a bunch of things at once, here we're just doing our cut job for our monograms, so we don't need to worry about that. If you're doing multiple jobs or you have multiple different rasters, so you have text, you have images, additional images, you can hit this checkbox and it will basically combine everything into one instead of doing one raster, then doing the other raster, so on and so forth. That does mean you're going to have one setting for all the rasters, so that is something to take into note if for whatever reason you want to make a different section of that darker versus another raster. So those are the settings there. So I'm going to save this, and then up here you can see this is our newest feature here that's been added to RE3. But this is a great new feature, the monogram feature up here. So I'm going to select this second one here. And I think depending on the support that they get, I expect that they'll probably be adding to this. So definitely show FSL your support, Facebook groups, YouTube, wherever it may be. So we're going to select this L here, and we're just going to make a nice little love monogram here. So I hit OK. You can see this is clearly too big for my material. So make sure that we keep the ratio, because if we uncheck this when we resize it, it's going to resize that incorrectly. So for example, if I hit 4, you can see how that actually gets squished. I'm just going to Control Z that, lock this ratio, make this about 4 inches here, and we're going to see if we can squeeze that in. So looks like we're pretty close, and you can actually just use the arrow keys too to line something up. So that's what I'm doing right here, just to kind of get that perfectly. Now if I wanted to make this even easier for myself, another thing that I could do is I can select this design here, hold the shift key, select the circle that I picked, which we know is the size and shape of the object, and essentially what I'm going to do is hit align center and align the middle here. So that basically centers that design perfectly in there. So you can see in here, the center is actually not going to work out for us because this shape is sort of a slightly unique shape here, where it's got this tail coming off of the top here. So that does actually center. You can see how it kind of left to right from this design here. It is centered in top to bottom. However, we actually need to go back to the other orientation that I had before because this design has this sort of unique shape to it. So it's not actually going to be perfectly centered, but it's going to use all that material, and we're just cutting this out. So we don't actually care if it's centered on this piece of material for aesthetic reasons. So for acrylic, I'm cutting 1/8 inch acrylic. So I'm actually just going to pull up my Muse cut settings, which is basically I have an Excel spreadsheet that I use for tracking all of my different cuts. And this is something I highly recommend that everybody do. Once you start cutting things, engraving things, you're going to be going through all kinds of different materials, and definitely just make yourself a file and keep all those settings like power, speed, number of passes, if you're doing engraves, what your DPI is, whether or not you have that material masked, so on and so forth. So for this, for acrylic, this is 1/8 inch acrylic. So I'm just going to have a speed of 30 and a power of 100, and I'm just going to cut that out in one pass. So because we're not looking to cut out this circle here, what I could do is I could just set my power to 1, and that way it's really not going to touch the acrylic much at all, and I can still leave it in there for reference. Or the right thing to do here is to just click on this and then just delete it. So before we run over to our laser, I'm going to estimate my job time here. So it looks like this is a pretty fast 2-minute 26-second job, which is awesome. So with that, I think we'll be ready to jump over the laser and fire it up and watch this baby run. Alright guys, so we are back over at the laser. You can see here I was still on the reference marker screen. Focus here. We're going to go to home, and now we're almost ready to run our job. But if you notice, our water isn't showing, and that's because I need to turn on my CW3000. So I have that over here. I just flip the switch on that, and you can see our water temperature there. The red light is when water is not flowing, so that pump takes a little bit to get going. And then additionally, because I have an aftermarket large air compressor over here, I do have an additional air compressor that I turn on over here. So it's going to get a little loud because I do need to turn my compressor on since I had just emptied the water out. So turn this on here, and then what I try to do is actually set my compressor for a relatively low speed for acrylic. And the reason for that is you do want sort of that flame-kissed edge for acrylic. That gives a really nice final output and perspective on your edges for the acrylic. So that's something where I like to run it at a very low pressure. So I'm just going to adjust that right now so it's a pretty low pressure, just barely coming out. And if I put my hand under here, it's just barely coming out, but just enough to keep that lens clean. So the only other thing here is my exhaust fan. So I'm going to fire this guy up, set it to full power, and then you can see I have my window exhaust here, and then I actually have a T that goes here. So I have a paint booth in the back there, and I also have some computers running in the background, which is what these extra vents are, to suck some of the heat out from them. But with that, we now have our exhaust set up, our compressor's running, our water's on, and we've got all the blue here, so we know that we're ready to run our job. So with that, we can hit run job. It's going to say our project 1 since we didn't name this one, and we can hit start. And with that, it's going to start cutting away. Alright, so there you guys have it. I did actually have to drop the speed down to 22 just to make sure that I would cut through. The first one I did not cut through all the way. Was a little too fast, but you can see the design fit just perfectly, just like it did in RE3. This is one of the reasons why I love the reference markers. I think it's a unique feature to FSL here, and I really do enjoy that feature. If there's other lasers that have that option, feel free to drop them below, but it really allows you to do a lot more with just using those and not actually needing a camera. Once I discovered those and started using them, I thought it was awesome. Again, with RE3 here, with the additional changes in the monograms, that is awesome. We've got our speed adjust here. So again, I love the ability to just do this medium speed. Previously, it was just in the software. So this is a huge improvement. I really like this. Additionally, I'll have to play in another video, but it looks like you might actually be able to now enable the rotary in the actual display, so you won't have to do the turning off and turning back on of the machine. So I'm going to play around with that and probably make another video. If there's anything else that you guys would like to see, feel free to like and subscribe. Drop a comment below if there's something else that you'd like to see. Again, if you're looking at purchasing one of these machines, be sure to use my discount code below. It gives you $125 off your laser. And with that, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.